Cisco, Genentech, billions of dollars in wealth created from nothing, created by nerds.
Without the entrepreneurs, you're nothing.
Nerds who often fired other nerds.
Steve Jobs is a national treasure. I had to fire him, though.
Venture capital made us richer. And now a new documentary tells the story of how it and luck created so many good things.
No, it wasn't my goal to start an industry.
But they did.
That train will run if I have to drive the damn thing myself.
And she created a railroad. Though she is fiction, Dagny Taggart. Tomorrow, the first Atlas Shrugged movie opens. This week, we went to the world premiere.
I was impressed.
Finally, there's a movie about the novel written decades ago.
It's been, what, over 50 years? It is about time.
We've been just waiting with bated breath.
And the movie comes this week when real-life entrepreneurs are under attack by the IRS. This is the week that your taxes are due.
That's Bob. He's my accountant. I don't want to have to pay Bob.
But I have to, because the tax code is so complex and uneven. Twitter considered moving because of San Francisco's high taxes. A union was offended. People protested.
Twitter, if that's the way you want to play it, you can get the hell out of town.
But I'm stuck in town, stuck with Bob. But what if we had simpler taxes?
Bob would lose out, but he could find more productive work. Anything would be better than so many of us spending thousands of dollars on this stuff. So tonight, let's attack the tax system.
And now, John Stossel.
Thank you. Later on tonight's program, we'll introduce you to the entrepreneurs who developed world-changing inventions like personal computers and explain the process that made them incredibly rich. But we start with an enemy of entrepreneurship, taxes. Have you done your taxes yet? Raise your hand.
Yes.
Wow, you folks are early. I'm impressed by that. And you better get to it. This year they're due on Monday. Tax day is a miserable day, not just because of what you have to pay, but because it's so much work just to figure out what you have to pay. Imagine how much creative energy would be released if we just had simpler taxes. Senator Rand Paul likes that idea. So, Senator Paul, will there be simplification, you think? Will the new Congress do things like that?
Well, you know, my taxes are too complicated for me to do. I've got to hire an accountant. I've always liked the idea of maybe having one piece of paper, you put your income down, you multiply by 10%, and you send in 10%. You know, the church never asked for more than 10%. I don't understand why the government should get any more.
Steve Forbes, audience likes that. Steve Forbes had a similar plan for a flat tax, though he said you'd have to have it be 17% to get the same revenue they get now.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if government were smaller. I think government's too big, and so if we had a 10% flat tax and that meant government had to be smaller, I'm all for it. But the disconnect is we have a lot of people for lower taxes up here, but we have very few politicians who will vote against the spending. It's easier to be against taxes, but it's harder to vote against spending.
All right, well, when you're talking about lower taxes, some people don't like you for that. There's a columnist in Rolling Stone who says you're a smug little jerk who wants to give tax cuts to rich people.
Well, the thing is you know, the people who create jobs, if we want new jobs, and everybody seems to want more jobs for our economy, we have to be in favor of job creators. And job creators are people who make money. And I guess I don't think I'm an American of the jealous sort. I don't think America is full of a bunch of jealous, envious folks. We are the people who believe that the poorest among us could be the richest among us. Ours was a country for the first time that our political leaders and our economic leaders were voted there by the populace, by democratic capitalism, based on their talent, but not based on who their parents were.
And of course, to give them the opportunity, they need to be relatively free of taxes and regulations, and increasingly they are not.
Right. Interestingly, the super wealthy a lot of times are liberal in our country because they don't really realize what it's like to pay taxes because they have so much income. It's the middle income folks that see their taxes that are more conscious of their taxes.
Now, the Debt Commission, Obama's Deficit Commission, says we should cap the mortgage deduction and have no itemized deduction for charitable giving. That would be part of their tax simplification. You okay with that? People will gripe about losing deductions.
I'm for simplification and getting rid of a lot of deductions if the rate's low enough. The only thing I fear about something that a lot of people have made plans on with the home mortgage deduction and things is that you catch people in midstream. You know, I'm 10 years into a 20-year mortgage on my house. I had planned on having that mortgage deduction as far as in planning on how big a house and how big a mortgage. So I do worry about the disruption there unless you make the rate of my taxes so low that there's no question I'm going to pay a lower rate. But if you take me to 20 or 25% rate and then tell me you're getting rid of my mortgage deduction, it may well not be something that would be good for me or the economy.
Thank you very much, Senator Rand Paul.
Thank you.
Now, my Fox Business colleague, Stuart Varney, was born in England. That gives him a unique perspective on America's tax system. Welcome, Stuart.
Hi, John.
In England at one time, I think when you were a young person, taxes were 80%.
Oh, no. When I was a youngster, I left England in 1972. The top marginal tax rate was 90%. Remember that Beatles song? Walk down the street, now tax your seat, etc., etc.? It was 90%. When you reached a certain income level, it was 90%. And Britain, when I left in 72, was a classic socialist society, period.
And you left and you went hitchhiking.
I did.
What'd you learn?
I learned how to hitchhike. I went to Hong Kong. The first place I got to and settled in was Hong Kong. Now, can you imagine going from Britain, socialist, aristocratically cultured Britain, to Hong Kong, totally free market? 90% top tax rate to Hong Kong, free market, meritocracy, where the top tax rate was 10%. And that was only paid by a very small fraction of the people. It was dynamic, it was liberating, it was a meritocracy, it was capitalism.
And those rules are what took Hong Kong from being a third world country to our level of wealth in just 50 years.
That is correct. I believe they're equivalent to Italian levels of standard of living at this point, from nowhere to there.
So Margaret Thatcher got the top rates in England down to around 40%. Things got better. But you came to the United States.
I did.
And what'd you learn here?
Okay, well, in 1982, I distinctly remember it. I was working for a competing network, albeit, okay. I was doing reasonably well.
This didn't exist at the time.
Okay.
Entrepreneurship here.
I was married, 2 children, another one on the way, earning reasonable money, and suddenly along came Ronald Reagan's tax rate cuts. And that man, that president, single-handedly lifted me into the American dream, lifted me into America's middle class. I got a whopping great big refund and a big increase in the amount of money that I kept for myself, which I could spend on my growing family. That was a moment I distinctly remember. Tax rates down, liberation. That was the feeling.
So you move from country to country. Most people can't do that. But in America, not only do we pay federal taxes, but state and local taxes, too, which is bad. But one good part about it is that, well, it's hard to leave the country. It's not so hard to leave a state or a city. So when one state imposes unusually nasty taxes, people can vote with their feet, and they do.
This year, Illinois raised its state income tax from 3 to 5%. Its corporate tax to 7%, and it passed the new law that forces internet retailers to act as tax collectors. That was enough to make this company hit the road. Internet sales company FatWallet.com concluded Illinois' new taxes would cost it 1/3 of its revenue. So even though moving's expensive, last week the company moved its equipment and its 50 workers to more business-friendly Wisconsin. All these people and money lost by Illinois because politicians raise taxes. Even Nancy Pelosi's backyard learned a tax lesson last week. Twitter threatened to move its $4 billion company from San Francisco because of its high taxes. So politicians quickly exempted companies in a certain section of San Francisco from the city's payroll tax.
Twitter, if that's the way you want to play it, you can get the hell out of town.
Unions and activists were outraged.
I mean, don't they see? if you don't like it, you shouldn't get a special tax break. Get out of town. Don't they see the loss if Twitter left?
Obviously not. They don't see the loss, do they? They would. I think it's because they see taxation not just as a way of raising money, but as a way of punishing success. There's an element there of punishment, of almost class warfare, of feeling, hey, you're just a winner in life's lottery. You're just lucky to make that money. Whether you're a business or an individual, we're going to take it off you. We're going to tax you, and it's good for society.
And in this case, it's Twitter. It's a business I assume many of them use, but it's cheating. They don't like it because it's a business?
Just remember, they only want your money. That's all they want. Just give me the money.
Well, for good social purposes.
Yes, because we need it more than you do. And our social purposes are much better than that mere pursuit of profit. You know that, John.
And it's not just the taxes that distort the economy and slow things down. It's also regulations. That is just what federal agencies added to our regulatory burden last year. And every day, they churn out another one of these books, another several hundred pages of little rules that you have to obey. And that kills entrepreneurship. And Stuart, you've felt the effect of this, both building a house and a swimming pool.
Yes, here's the example. I built a house, log home actually, in the Catskills, upstate New York.
A log home, okay.
Okay, so I asked for planning permission to build a new home. Planning permission was a one-page sheet. Filled it out in about 45 seconds. The inspection was a guy who came round with a shovel and a bucket full of water. He digs a small hole, pours the water in, and he sees how long it takes to percolate the water away. I passed the test. Planning permission instantly granted. A swimming pool built in my backyard in New Jersey took 2 years, countless hearings, all kinds of regulations, the payment of lawyers and whoever else was in line to take my money, vast expense, huge delay. They didn't want me to build that pool. They just wanted me to pay them to build that pool. In the Catskills, they welcomed me with open arms. No regulation, lots of regulation. Big difference.
And country by country, this is why Hong Kong is rich.
Yes.
China is starting to get rich, but without capitalism, it took much longer.
Yes. Just get off our backs. We're naturally enthusiastic, you know, and excited. We're dynamic people. Get off our backs and let us show you what we can do.
And all right. Well, on that note, thank you, Stuart Varney.
John. Thank you.
Has a wonderful program in the morning on the Fox Business Network. People take the benefits of capitalism for granted. They don't realize the great things that burdensome taxes and regulations kill. The famous novel Atlas Shrugged explains that very well. And finally, this week, the first Atlas Shrugged movie hits the theaters. We'll take you to the world premiere coming up. But next, Apple, Cisco, Genentech all created billions in wealth and gave us cool things like this iPhone. So how did that happen? I never really understood it until this week when I watched something that taught me. And when we return, I'll show you what I learned.